Mr. Joe, you want to talk about the moratorium, how it's affecting Lafayette's economy right now, and anything you might think about that?
Well, I'll tell you that one of the things that I said shortly after Katrina, I guess about 3 weeks into what we were dealing with here in Lafayette, that I felt the greatest danger to people in the next tragedy of whatever it was politicians. And in particular, politicians overreacting to avoid the kind of press that our governor and the mayor of New Orleans got and others. And we saw it happen shortly after that when Rita came in, and we saw Houston evacuate, as it turns out, unnecessarily, and people died. And I fear that's what we're seeing today, is that we're seeing, because a bus exploded in Houston, remember? People on there from the nursing home, and as it turned out, Rita turned in quicker. So as it turned out, and I'm not judging because you've got to be in those shoes, but as it turned out with 20/20 vision, it was unnecessary, and people died. And what we're seeing today, I think, are politicians taking advantage of an opportunity, and the moratorium has compounded the problem. So you have people who are working in the fishing industry that may have been working, one spouse has been working in the fishing industry, working at the in a processing plant, and the other spouse is working offshore. Now, neither one of them have a job. And so it trickles down, and it's going to trickle down to everyone, including maybe potentially much of America. The problem is most of America right now, how many of y'all were ready to go to Detroit in support of the automobile industry a year or so ago? Nobody. Nobody would have thought about getting in a car and driving up there because it didn't touch us. And so that's a challenge that we have, and I'm afraid that much of what we're seeing with the national media right now is causing additional problems because people have canceled vacations along the Gulf Coast. They're canceling all kinds of things, assuming that everything's got oil on it. You know, I had a phone call shortly after Katrina from a business person that said, could you get on the national airwaves somehow, because we can't get truck drivers to come into Louisiana from the west. And this is before Rita, because they think they're going to go underwater and get shot at. And that was a real issue because of the perception that people have. So what happens is you have those two people that are working, one in the fishing industry, one in the oil and gas industry. Neither one of them have a job, but when they did, they were both working long hours. And so when they came home, rather than cutting their own grass, they paid somebody to cut their grass. They're going to quit doing that. So, you know, they're not going to buy what they were buying at the grocery store. They're not going to replace shoes as often as they were replacing their shoes. They're going to, so this is going to affect the entire economy if it continues on the way it is. So on July the 21st, there'll be a rally at the Cajun Dome that I would encourage as many people to go to as possible in support of our industries, which is, of course, when we talk about the industries, we're talking about the people. And that's the thing that people, you know, kind of tend to, we don't forget it, but it is the people that are being affected, not the industry. The industry is a gray mass. It's really the human beings that work in those industries. The environment, why is that important? Because it affects human beings. You know, it's touching to see the birds and all those things, but the environment is important to human beings. And I will tell you, I personally have a lot of faith in Mother Nature. And I have a question that I'd like to ask the biologists, and that is, not a hurricane, but maybe is potentially a hurricane helpful to this?
It's going to have good sides and bad sides. It may disperse it more naturally, but it also may bring it to places where it normally wouldn't be, and move it into the market.
Well, that's what I mean. I guess if we could craft our own hurricane, there's probably some benefits to it that if it went along parallel to the coast and didn't really hit us, didn't bring it inland as much, it would be beneficial.
Keep it down about 75 miles an hour.